What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Recently, a lot of you have asked why in the last couple years I switched over to raised beds. So today, I want to share with you the ugly truth to why I switched over. Let's go! When I first started growing on this property years ago, I put down a thick wood chip mulch and grew everything into the ground. This worked great for me because I was following the back to Eden method and it was perfect for my perennials. Time was working for me because as I put this thick mulch down and it broke down, it helped to build good soil underneath, which is really fortunate. And as I dig deep into the wood chips, you'll notice the soil just gets nicer and nicer. And I started with just all sand here, and now I have some nice soil. So again, time has worked for me in this sense, but in another sense, time has worked against me. And that's what I want to share in more detail as I get into the 7 reasons why I switched over to raised beds. The first reason that I switched over to raised beds is it gives me better season extension on both sides. For instance, in the spring, this raised bed heats up quicker than the ground soil will. And also in the fall, I can grow much later into the season and actually even through the winter. Because what I do is once it starts getting cold, I plan out my cold hardy things like this. Then I cover it first with one layer in my hinged hoop house, one layer of plastic. And each layer of plastic will move me up about 1.5 zones. So I'm in zone 7A right here. I only have 180 days to grow. For me, that's just not enough. So at the end of it, I actually end up putting 2 layers of plastic. So each layer gives me 1.5 zones. So that'll move me up 3 zones. So I go essentially from 7A to 10A, allowing me to grow all winter long. The second reason that I switched over to raised beds is when you grow in these raised beds, you're not dependent upon the natural soil. So like I mentioned in the beginning, I put those wood chips down. That helped me to build good soil over time. But when I build a raised bed, I don't have to wait for that. I'm not dependent upon whatever soil's there. I'm not at the mercy of it. So if you have super rocky soil or soil that is like all clay and it doesn't drain well, then you don't have to just fight against that. You can build a raised bed and build your own soil like I did. I brought in my own soil. I made it with some compost, some perlite, and some peat moss. Now I've got excellent soil. So when you want to grow things like carrots, they need a soft soil that they can go deep in and build good roots, because if it's too rocky, that'll cause the carrot to like break off in pieces and you won't get one nice, thick, juicy carrot. So when you can grow in these raised beds, again, you're not at the mercy of the soil that you have. The third reason that I started growing in raised beds goes back to what I mentioned right at the beginning of the video of how time is actually working against me now too. So when I first started gardening, I had little to no issues with any of the critters coming in and stealing a lot of my stuff. But as time has progressed, I've grown more and more food, and this whole garden and backyard has gone from almost like a food desert to a food paradise. The only thing is, it's not just a food paradise for me, it's also a food paradise for all the critters and the pests and the bugs. So this year it got a little too far when the chipmunks and the squirrels came in and they stole all of my peanuts. So I had peanuts growing here, and here's some evidence, and they were doing so well. I was excited to show you guys how well they did and to harvest them, to have my first big peanut harvest. I waited 100 days for this because that's how long peanuts take, about 90 to 100 days, or 90 to even 110 days in some instances. And then after all that time waiting and guiding the plants along, about a day before I wanted to come out and harvest my peanuts, the chipmunks came and they grabbed all of them. I'll give you guys a clip of what they actually did to it. This was a little bit upsetting at first, but in the end I'm kind of happy because it taught me that I can't do it like this. I have to make sure I'm protecting my harvest even up to the day that it's basically ready. And that's what raised beds do for me. They allow me to protect from all the critters and even the bugs and the pests from coming into my garden. So when I have these raised beds, we can do excellent things like when we have deeper ones, like putting the hardware cloth at the bottom so voles and moles can't dig underneath. And I can also build covers for the top of it, which is what I'm going to do in the future. So I'll set up a system sort of like I do for my hinged hoop houses, but instead of using plastic, I'll use insect netting, covering the whole top right before it's ready to harvest. This way the chipmunks and the squirrels can't come and steal my harvest. It looks like while I was turned around, Tuck went and snatched his own carrot. So he goes and digs his own carrots up, this guy. If you love seeing him out here with us, hit that like button. And that's another thing about the raised beds too, and why I might make some a little taller in the future, because it helps to find and show Tuck where the beds are. This way he doesn't just walk over the young plants when they're just coming up like we have right here. But I also like putting some stuff down at almost ground height for him so he can go grab his own carrots and things whenever he feels like eating them. He's alert right now because the squirrels are out and he knows that they took some of the peanuts. And he was a little upset when we found out that the squirrels got the peanuts, but I definitely cannot blame this guy because I have the whole garden fenced in, so Tuck can only come in the garden when I come in the garden. If I didn't have it fenced in, this guy wouldn't let a chipmunk or a squirrel in his garden, would you, boy? The fourth reason that I switched over to raised beds is because they have better water management. What I mean by this is the raised beds can drain easier and better, which makes it so they're not just clogged with that water and becoming anaerobic. Also, when you build your own soil, not only does it drain a little better, it also has better water retention. Another thing is when I build these raised beds, I build it all level. So when I water, it's all going evenly throughout the bed, as opposed to if you were on a slope and all the water just drained down to the lowest part of the slope. Another thing about the water is I'm not walking around on this raised bed, which means I'm not compacting the soil. And because the soil isn't compacted, it overall has better soil structure, allowing it again to retain water and disperse water better. The fifth reason that I switched over to raised beds is because overall it's less weeding. One thing is that I plant in a high intense style, as you can see here. So these plants, how dense it is, it basically creates a living mulch, making it so not a lot of light hits the soil and not a lot of weeds come up. Also, I built this soil, so I don't have a lot of just natural weeds coming in. Another thing is it's better for invasive weeds to help suppress them and get rid of them. Because the soil is so high, those invasive weeds underneath that were there, maybe the perennial weeds, can't come up. And also if you have something like Bermuda grass, it can't creep along the soil and into your bed. So it makes it much easier when it comes to weeding. The sixth reason that I switched over to raised beds is because overall they're just easier to manage. For instance, on this bed here, I've got this ledge and it makes it so it's not backbreaking. I can just sit here, reach in when I'm working on my plantings and harvesting and doing all different kind of stuff. Also, if you want, you can build a bed that's essentially as tall as you, so you don't have to bend over at all, just working in the bed like this. The seventh reason that I switched over to raised beds is because overall, it's a cleaner look. And it's a lot easier when you can approach a garden, breaking it into little square foot boxes like I do. It makes things so simple when you can look at everything from just 1 square foot, as opposed to having to plan out and plan the whole garden all at once. It just makes it simple, easy, and a lot more fun, in my opinion. I also love that I can build all different kinds of styles of raised beds, like this pallet one here, regular 2x4 or 2x10 wooden one over there. And I even have some different style of raised beds that I'm building in the future, allowing the whole garden to just have an overall a cleaner, cooler look, in my opinion. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope I encourage you to get a raised bed in if you don't have one already, or maybe even add a few more. I know there's not all amazing things when it comes to raised beds. There are some downsides. One of them could be that you think it might be, cost a little bit when it starts, but in my opinion, the worth outweighs the cost. So that's super important. You can grow more food in less space, easier to manage, and everything else that I mentioned. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share with your friends. Don't forget to check out the merch down low. And remember, whenever you're on Amazon, start your shopping with our Amazon affiliate link. Tuck and James will be back at you again real soon. We